Nice and quiet and diligent makes a difference, doesn't it? So again, I should have been more uju in the beginning. So we all got it together, which is good. So, it seems to me the primary understanding is understanding what we mean by the awakened mind. Mindfulness, awareness, sati, sati sampajanya, there's a whole bunch of words that we use. You don't want to quibble about words, you just want to understand what we mean by the awake mind. And when you know the way things are, then you're awake. It's not so complicated. And if we never establish that sense of knowing that life is just like this, then we tend to be reactive rather than responding from wisdom. So I might know that my mind is worrying, right? And I'm worrying about this, and then I might think I shouldn't be worrying. I should just don't make it a problem. It's going to be okay. Yeah, but that's not, you kind of know you're worrying, but you're not really awake. You're just lost. You know there's something wrong. You know your mind is suffering, but you've never really established presence. Oh, it's like this. Because if you don't do that, you don't really do the first noble truth, understanding suffering. So that is something that you remember to do. You get better and better at it. But it's not a judgment. It's not about the state of mind. It's not getting any other state of mind. It's making quite conscious that this situation feels like this. And if it seems to me if you don't get that, I don't think you can really practice correctly. Because you'll be coming from some idealism, some desire to get rid of something. So consider that, what you mean by that. People ask, well, what's the Pali word for that? Oh, sati sampajanya, there's different words. And then they ask, well, is sati the same as mindfulness? Is that the same as awareness? That's just a lot of waffle. Just a lot of thinking. People just want to parse it all out, really. And someone might do that for you, but just like, what is presence? What is just knowing right now? It's so simple. It's not complicated, not so complicated. The doubting mind might think, well, is this really sati? Have I really got sati? Or am I really aware of it? Just thinking. And then if you're aware, oh, this is doubt. It's doubt. And so it's that simple. So that's the starting point, I would say, of Buddhist practice. The awake mind. And from that awake mind, you can reflect. Well, seems to be a lot of tension in the body. Body's feeling really tight. So you can make conscious the tension in the body. Right? Or, wow, it's a lot of thinking. What's that thinking about? Oh, there's a lot of worry. You make conscious worry. We're very ordinary. And we all do this, otherwise we'd be in an asylum. We all know how to do this to a certain extent. We're just heightening this now to more interesting levels, I would say. So right understanding is not just doctrinal. It's not just the doctrine of Buddhism. It's the awakening to the way things also. It's also, you could say that's right understanding, isn't it? When I'm here and I'm awake to what I'm experiencing, then I have an understanding. It's not intellectual, it's just, I know, this is the way it is. End of candy. This is the cessation of propolis candy. Sorry. Okay, so that you'll hear, if you've been listening to Lompo Sumedha recently, like in the last 20 years, he'll just keep saying, it's like this. It's like this. And again, it's a very ordinary thing, but to actually do it, it's like this, you have to stop. You just have to stop trying to do something about life or get somewhere, you just have to stop. And so it's another good word, just stop. I think I did a meditation at the last Zoom. I just said to everyone, stop. Every 10 minutes. Stop. Did it work? A little bit. Because you can see that the mind's just running on, going here and going there and doing that. So stopping becomes a kind of like a lifestyle, I'd say. A skillful lifestyle you introduce throughout the ordinariness of all the things you do. And the value of it is then you rest the mind, but then you see the way things are. And when you see the way things are, then you can make a right effort. So if you never establish right understanding, you won't have right thought. And if you don't have right thought, you won't have right intention. If you don't have right intention, you won't have right effort. Right? Right. So understanding, people can sometimes understand intellectually, but not really awaken to the way things are. You know, they can have an idea about Buddhism, but not really, like they can say maybe, right understanding is that there is suffering and there's a cause. But maybe they never really wake up to the fact that they're anxious or that they're whatever it might be. So that can't be emphasized too much. When you do that, you usually use some kind of language. Smero's language is very good. It's like this. But then listen, I would suggest, you need to listen to the silence right after that statement. I feel really angry. Anger is like this. And then stop. And let that become conscious. Let that become conscious. So that, again, that's the language I like to use. So then and that brings up a thinking mind now, which is in touch with actually what's going on. The idealized thinking that we have is usually, I shouldn't be like this, you shouldn't be like that, things like that, which isn't really in contact with the way things are. You might say to your partner, you shouldn't be so angry, but that's not going to help your partner, right? If you say, oh, how does it feel to be angry? Or you look really upset, how does that feel? Rather than you shouldn't be that way. You say that to yourself too. I had one situation where I had a really difficult time in one monastery with a very difficult person, and I wasn't handling it well at all. I was really kind of very, very upset about it. But I was mindful of it. I was dealing with it, but it just kind of threw me for a loop I didn't expect. I was kind of blindsided. And then one of the monks came and said, well, you're not handling this very well. I wanted to kill him. Because, he wasn't saying, oh, how does it feel? He was saying, you shouldn't be like that. Which is, is a very unkind thing to do. And that we can do that to ourselves too. I shouldn't be angry, I shouldn't be fearful, but that's not mindfulness, that's judgment. I shouldn't break the precept, sure. But that's different. That's action and reaction to it. So the awakened mind is not a judgment. It's knowing the way things are. From that you can make assessment and judgment and begin to practice right intention or right thinking, and then from that comes right effort. So this morning I was talking just very loosely about contentment with little. Santosa, does that mean contentment with little? Because we have the word santuti in Pali. Is your name?
Means happy.
Means happy.
Yeah. In Sanskrit.
Could come from the same root, wouldn't it?
In India, santosha means what you mentioned. There's santosha.
Contentment. Yeah. There you go. So I was thinking of your name. So you can see how, you're in a situation you feel discontent. First of all, you have to awaken. Discontent feels this way. And then you could say, yeah, I don't like it, but it's good enough. And that's right thought, right intention, and then right effort in doing that. But it's all done in clarity, in wisdom, in presence. It's not just a reaction that, you shouldn't be discontent, you should be more content. That's not mindfulness, that's ego, that's cultural pressures, whatever. So in terms of right effort, you have the idea that there is the effort to sustain the wholesome qualities that are already there in consciousness. You've already heard these four. The effort to initiate new wholesome qualities that haven't manifest. The effort to abandon unwholesome qualities that have manifest. And the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from manifesting that have not yet manifested. And that's very logical. That's very, very logical. So the effort to abandon unwholesome qualities, what would abandonment mean in this sense? Well, like an unwholesome quality might be something like, let's say someone betrays you in a relationship, in business. Maybe you make an agreement with a business person. You think they're your friend, and they run off with your secretary and $1 million or something like that. So how do you feel? Not good. Definitely not good. So you've trusted the person, you've been honest, you've been open, and they betray you. The result in your heart is going to be pretty profound. It's not going to be like losing $1 in the subway. Right? It's going to really, really hurt. It's going to hurt very, very profoundly. Unless you're Ajahn Chah. Right? But, us ordinary kind of beings. So you have to take into mind that if you get hurt badly, then the resultant karma of that is going to echo in your mind. It has to. It's just the way the emotional mindset is set up. And the way it will echo will be one of, why did I do that? Why did I trust that person? Or I think I'll kill them. I think I'll bump them. It won't be pretty. You won't maybe tell anyone, but it's not going to be nice in there, inside your television screen or whatever, inside the drama. It's going to be drama. So what would abandoning the unwholesome mean in that sense? The abandonment there would mean that you don't create the self-thinking around it. You keep identifying with it. Oh, this is the result of betrayal. This is rage. This is the desire to murder. This is the desire for revenge. You make it conscious what you're feeling, as opposed to thinking, well, in the text it says abandoning the unwholesome, so I shouldn't feel any revenge. I shouldn't feel any rage. I should just, people should just betray me and I should have upekkha. That's not human. You're a human being. You have emotions and you have feelings, and it just is not the way it works. So if you come back to right understanding, and this is an extreme example, but then you say, this is what happens when you get betrayed. Ooh, this is difficult. This is really, really difficult. You're honest about it. And then your mind will try to run with a storyline, try to change the story by, whatever. And that's what the mind does. It tries to change the past. You try to relive the past. But it's not working. But that's driven by strong emotion. So if you keep coming back to, it feels this way, that, I would say, is abandoning the unwholesome. But the unwholesome has this power in your consciousness now to keep coming up and keep coming up. So you have to do it a lot. You just have to be very patient. So the trigger of memory is there. You can't get away from memory unless you have Alzheimer's, and then memory goes all over the place. So the memory is there. You can't erase that. And then the memory triggers a situation. The memory is unpleasant, and you start to run with it because you don't want the unpleasant. You start to rethink it, or you figure out, I'm going to hurt them back, or whatever. That's attachment. Right? The arising of that feeling of betrayal, that's not attachment. That's the result of the situation. Sure, if you were an arahant, maybe it wouldn't arise now, but here it is. So that's not what we mean by attachment, because that has been triggered, and now it has a momentum, a serious energy momentum in consciousness. So attachment would be then the self-thinking around that powerful mood. And that's different. So then if you've been training it's like this, then you can see the mind running off into blame or whatever it is and say, oh yeah, but this is what it feels like. It feels like this. And that's what we mean by non-attachment. And a lot of people make the mistake and perceive that word non-attachment as having no feeling. So they have a feeling or a memory from a very profound hurt, and then they feel it, and they say, "Oh, I'm attached. I'm feeling angry." That's vipaka karma. That's resultant karma. How could it be otherwise, right? Because that's the human body is emotional. It's energetic. It has these things. So then, abandoning you see, well, this is going to be a process. I get really hurt by this. I've been really, really hurt financially, emotionally, and so on. But I'm going to work with this. So the mind wants to go to revenge, say. It wants to go to revenge. So maybe, then you see it going to revenge. You know what you do? You do revenge deliberately. Because it's so powerful now to say, okay, I think I'll torture you. And then I'll do this and I'll do that. And then you stop. You make conscious the desire for revenge. Right? You're not afraid of it. Because usually you're afraid of things like you're Buddhist. We don't do revenge. We only do metta and forgiveness. But inside, you want to strangle the guy. Take his head off like a chicken. And that's the real feeling. The real feeling isn't metta. The real thing is not forgiveness. It's murderous. So first of all, panatipata, don't kill. You keep the precepts. But then you make, how do you make conscious something? Sometimes you have to say it. Right? So you said, I'll never forgive you. Oh, this is what non-forgiveness feels like. But you start to see that's an object. You don't really believe in it. But by making it conscious, you're no longer afraid of it. You bring it out. Obviously, if you really believe in it, then you're lost. But most of us really don't believe in this stuff. We struggle actually with wanting it to be better. But if we don't allow it to be conscious, we keep suppressing it with even metta bhavana, it still pops up because it hasn't really been made conscious. Lompo Samedo's constant sort of encouragement to us in the early years of Shithurst and Nanachat was consciousness is the escape hatch. When things become conscious, they're actually going away from you. Their energy is going, if you allow them to do that. If you, however, then, I shouldn't be like this, I shouldn't feel like this, that's not mindfulness. So you're fully mindful, and in the language, you play around with it if you want, but you realize the storyline is built on the energy, and you keep struggling with that. It's a struggle, it really is a struggle, but you use it to understand. And then over time, the memory becomes less powerful, you kind of resolve it in your own mind a bit, and every now and then, the memory gets triggered. So you think you've resolved it, you think you're pretty cool now, this is a year later, and then someone comes to you and says, you know Charlie, the guy that used to work for you, the bandit, Charlie's a really nice guy, and you want to kill the person. And it triggers the emotion once again, right? I thought I was through that. I thought I was past that. Oh, God. It's like this. You go back to that again, because memory's like that. I met like one person who had a really horrific divorce, really toxic. And then they're at some party a year later and praising his ex, praising the toxic relationship. He really had difficulty in right speech. So this is not really self, it's memory. It's memory that's functioning, and memory is very, very powerful. So if you understand what we mean by the awakened mind, then you either have to be very, very patient, comes up, but after a while its energy begins to dissipate because it is anicca. If you don't feed it, if you don't believe in it, if you see it as an object, if you feed it, it becomes more. It's a monster. So then after a while, you find yourself having the feeling of hatred and then saying, I'm tired of that. I think I'll forgive. And then you say, that was a mistake, I hate you. But that energy starts to be more, starts to come up more, right? That's the way the mind works, I'm sorry. And then forgiveness becomes more and more natural, and then you might even, feel better for the person or whatever. But that's not a demand. It's not a demand. So abandoning the unwholesome is not a one-off, oftentimes. It's a process, depending on the intensity of what has arisen. Preventing the unwholesome from arising, well, let's say in the same scenario, 5 years later now you've worked it through, and you really have worked it through, and then you find someone gossiping about this person in a way that you agree. And you want to get in there and really put a knife, because that's the habit. You say, I'm not going there. I'm not going to reintroduce that habit in the mind because I don't want to get reborn there. You prevent, in a temptation, like this guy's everyone's making fun of him and calling him a fool and a bandit. You say, no, I'm not going there. I'm not going to create a sense of self around this. I'm going to say, but may he be free from suffering. Or may this person be free from suffering. Because you want to protect your mind from becoming that all over again. Preventing the unwholesome to arise also is very much helpful when you have kalyanamitta. Obviously, honest business relationships, honest business partners, Dharma friends who constantly reflect for you what our value systems are. So in the Sangha, we have what we call samana sanya, and samana is a monastic in the robe, renunciant, and sanya is perception. And we say when monks are on their own and they're not well trained, and they're just in situations which aren't monastic, they don't have samana sanya. They don't have the reminders of what a monastic does and acts and speaks. And they're in dangerous territory because they can just become very much casual or very much sloppy or whatever because they don't have the reflection of their kalyanamitta. It's very powerful, a robe, very, very powerful kind of sanya. So for us, say if we starting a new place, or like we're starting a new place is being started outside of in India, it's about 5 hours from Delhi, I think, east, and there we have 3 monks. So we wouldn't send a monk there to be alone. Needs help, needs samana sanya. So anyway, in any ways that you can get that kind of protection, sometimes you do it through pictures of teachers, or you have contact with a teacher, or you have contact with friends who really value the precepts and value the practice, and you keep in contact with them. Because if you start to slide away from sila samadhi panya, then you don't want to see them. Because you don't want to be known to be a person who is now really not practicing Dhamma. So you start to go away from those kalyanamitta, which is not good. It's not good. It's good to just like let's say if a monk has been on his own and then he's been in some way sloppy, not immoral, just sloppy, and then he comes into a really good sangha, he says, "Oh wow, I was really sloppy there. I was losing the plot." And then he's grateful for being back in a sangha. Obviously, lay folk don't have that, but so some way, and that's why lay people are encouraged to develop kalyanamitta, spiritual friends. So that's why groups are good, even if they're online groups. You just remind you, oh, this is what we do. These are our values. And if you're going off that value system, your friends remind you of that just by being there, right? Just by being there. So that's kind of ways of preventing the unwholesome. And then developing the wholesome and sustaining the wholesome, and that's a bit easier to understand. But you do, like, let's say, like on a retreat, right? This is a very rare opportunity. You're all busy people. We've got lots to do. So, but now you have a momentum of the wholesome. Right? You have some stillness. You have some aditana barami. You've got some ideas to work with. How do you keep that going? So it's very important after a retreat to try to create the intentions to sustain the momentum of a retreat. Obviously, you can't have the same serenity in silence because your lives are very busy. So don't expect that. Realize you will go to hell soon. Dog Valley. No, I didn't. That's. Have you heard of Dhyana yet? So you will be in more complex situations, let us say, and then the experience will not be serene. The experience of walking on Dundas Street or something like that is not serene. It's cacophonic. It's disturbing. It disturbs the senses. So if you think that meditation is serenity, the environment here gives us serenity. That's why it's so beautiful and valuable. But if you're expecting that on Dundas Street or wherever, right, it doesn't work that way. It's got too much inputs. But then you can say, wow, this is what confusion feels like. Then you don't get lost in it. This is what aversion feels like. Oh, it stinks in this city. Ooh, the pollution is terrible. Oh, God, all the noise. Blah, blah, blah. Then you're lost in the negative perception. But you say, oh, this is what a feeling of loss is like. I wish I was back. You make conscious the way things are. And then the negativity around you doesn't overwhelm you. It's just sense input. So you have the famous story of Ajahn Chah, and he used this line a lot in other ways, but we were in London, and we had a vihara on a very busy street, and it was a very loud street with buses and loud people, and there was a pub across the road. Sometimes there was a rock group on the second floor of the pub would be practicing. People would be coming out of the pub drunk and yelling, and once our Dana box got stolen, someone broke in, and all the good things of city life. And so Ajahn Chah came to teach, and our shrine room was on the second floor, and I think it's a building, I think Edwardian building, and the windows were like 10 foot high ceilings, and they weren't double glazed. So you got this. There's no barrier to the sound, and we're sitting there. I think everyone that was there lived in a place which was quieter than the vihara. The vihara is sort of noisy, and so we go through the meditation, and I'm feeling, oh gosh, it's so noisy. Oh, Paul, kind of me worrying kind of thing, and then Longpo, we stopped the meditation. He said, now you think that noise is bothering you. I suggest you stop going out there and bothering that noise. Which is true. He said, the noise is just doing what noise does. Sound is just doing what sound does. It's not bothering you, you're bothering it. It was really kind of and he used that a lot in different ways, but it's very true. The noise is just sound, but it's coarse. It's unpleasant. So it's Vedana, it's Dukkha Vedana, but you don't have to go to Dukkha, you don't have to go to suffering if you take responsibility. So the thing about refinement of environment is very helpful, but it's still uncertain. It's still a sankhara, it's still constructed. It's not the unconditioned. So you always return to, oh, it's really noisy, and this is what noise feels like. Then the grating nature of it is there, but then you don't pick it up with aversion. You don't become averse to the sound. Right? So you have a momentum, I'm speaking in terms of sustaining the wholesome that has arisen. You have that momentum. And the momentum is about mindfulness, not about refinement. Because refinement is, you have a momentum there, but it's tenuous. It comes and it goes. So even refinement states of mind is still sankhara. it's still sankata, it's still compounded. Whereas awareness, no, awareness is not compounded. So you have that, and then in terms of like developing wholesome states of mind that you haven't developed, that you work on. So you might think that, well, I'd like to develop mudita more in my life. I'd like to see, well, what is mudita about? And how does joy work in the mind? And what has beauty got to do with that? So you explore something which you haven't really explored. You've kind of explored maybe metta, karuna's easy. What would mudita mean? Maybe read about it, and then you see, like I say, you see a child that is smiling, and you say, oh yeah, when that child smiles, I smile. Oh yeah, that's what mudita is. It's connected joy, connected to someone else's joy, as opposed to jealousy. Oh, and you start to kind of ponder that. So maybe you pick up a theme and say, I'll try to remember the joy of my kids, or my parents, or my partner, or whatever, or I'll try to remember the serenity of my teacher, Lanchan Cha, right, or things like that, and that brings you a sense of mudita, their accomplishment. I'll try to remember the enlightenment of the Buddha. I think, oh wow, I like that, and that brings up a joy. And then I've never done that before, so I think I'll experiment with that. So you can really, and that's very creative. And interesting, actually, very interesting. So any kind of intentions around enlivening the Brahma Viharas, that's very good, very, very good. Because that to me is really, to some extent, what enlightenment is about. The Brahma Viharas are functioning quite naturally in all situations. So right effort comes from right intention. Right intention is right thinking, really, and the right thinking comes from right understanding. They're all really very much one package once you start to understand it. Okay, I'll leave that for your reflection.
Namaste.